Here we go.
Oh, I thought we were going to talk over each other again. All right, Warwick.
All right.
Are you ready?
I'm bracing myself.
Can a match box?
I don't know.
No, but a tin can.
Hello, listeners.
Hello.
Great to be back. Another week here on the podcast.
Another week, another mum joke.
Another forced laugh from me, which has actually got me into a bit of hot water on social media, Coxie.
Well, it turns out that's everybody's favourite thing. It's not my joke. It's your forced laugh or your lack of laugh.
Yes.
Not actually the joke.
It's the hate that I bring on myself. See, I don't even have to be trolled on social media. I can just squeeze out a pretend laugh at your mum jokes and in it comes.
Our community are fierce supporters of the mum joke.
So I have, you know what? I'm data-driven, Coxie. I'm all about the numbers.
Here we go.
The numbers have spoken. The jokes stay. You're obviously a master of your craft.
Thank you.
And I'm going to work on my authentic laughter from now on, listeners. There you go.
I'm feeling like there's a bit of a segue coming.
Well, I was disappointed actually that the focus was on your jokes and not on my segues. I've been working on my segue game for years.
We did get trolled once about your segues. Can you recall?
I don't remember the specifics of it, but I know that I've had a few things on social media that are a bit distasteful.
Yes, somebody was very unhappy at your segues. I happen to think that they're the star of the show after the mum jokes, of course.
After the mum jokes, yeah. All right, so we're talking data and numbers, and yes, it's another cheesy, obvious, in hindsight at least, segue. And so Coxie and I are coming at you today, listeners, with a quickie and a bit of a, I don't know, we've given a few coach slaps here on the podcast, and it's hard to do because this is a one-way medium because we talk at you, listeners, and you listen along there in your ute or your dunny or the kitchen or wherever you're at. And we don't have an opportunity for a two-way dialogue. This is just us doing lots of telling, really, isn't it, Nick?
Yes.
I feel like a parent.
I was about to say the same thing, and I thought, no, I'm going to refrain because that might make people feel like, oh, now I don't want to listen to this lesson.
I just realised so these are on YouTube now too, gang.
Yeah.
So if you want to, instead of watching, I don't know, mountain bike crashes or cats on Roombas or something, you could actually sit on the couch at night and watch me and Nick. And I just picked up my coffee and I thought, hey, I'll have a sip of my coffee while Nick's talking. I was like, oh, crap, we're on YouTube.
Yeah, but somebody does a podcast and they're sitting there smoking joints all the way through the podcast. Who is it? Is it?
Crikey. Not Joe Rogan.
It might be.
I think he had a bit of a toke on his podcast.
Yeah.
He gets away with everything, that bloke.
I know. Can you imagine if we did that? Not that I would do that. However, can you?
Might make the jokes funnier for me.
It'd be very funny for you, and our listeners might think we've got a bit of cred after that.
And I do live in Tasmania, so I've probably got access to a fair bit of good stuff.
You are on a farm, are you not?
Hello to all the Tasmanians that listen who are not dope heads. But anyway, drug references, is that going to get us banned from YouTube and Spotify?
Probably. We should mark this as explicit.
Explicit.
Sure.
I'm just taking a note, see? For those of you watching on YouTube.
Now we're very transparent. They're going to see every eye roll I do, or every time I flick my face and think this conversation is making me cranky. They're going to see the whole lot.
Or when I'm sitting here, Facebooking on my phone while you're talking, it's like,
pretending
come on, Coxie. Oh, yep. So I'll make a funny point now. Anyway, let's get back on track, eh?
Right, this is serious.
Another week, another dollar, another bit deeper in debt.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like the Australian economy, really.
It's not looking too shabby.
So we are seeing lots of the media, as you would no doubt be seeing, listeners and watchers. Hello on YouTube. And there's a lot of fear around. Nick, you and I have been talking about this a fair bit. We don't buy into the fear. We do pay attention to what's going on.
Oh.
And I've said to a few people lately, because you and I have called a few things in advance. We've predicted a few things that have happened over the last few years. And I'm not saying that out of arrogance or to be smarmy or anything. But it's just that, particularly for me, I'm old enough to have been through many of these economic cycles.
That That was so kind of you. Thank you.
And so I just have the wisdom of hindsight. When you've experienced stuff multiple times, you start to get better at seeing when it's coming up again. It's what driving is all about. When you've overshot a corner or hit a slippery patch on a road a few times, you start to see those things in advance more than when it was your first time. So for many of you listening to this could well be the first major economic downturn that you've experienced, at least in business. If you're one of our younger listeners, sort of 30 or less, there hasn't been a massive thing like this for quite some time. In 2008 was the GFC, and even that wasn't as catastrophic as it was made out to be, and neither were the previous recessions and downturns and meltdowns and stock corrections and the tech wrecks and everything else that's happened. So I don't want you to think that Nic and I are just a bit sort of blasé about what's going on, but we certainly want to come to you with a message of what is going to serve you best over the next year or two, regardless of what happens with the economy, Nic.
I think it's a message of measure. We were talking yesterday with some of our clients about trends, and that's what you're referring to right now, because we have the benefit of some wisdom or grey hairs or age, call it what you like. Although there's plenty in here too. That we have seen the trends before. We understand. Oh gosh, I can remember my parents paying 17-18% interest on their home loan and nearly breaking, and yet they still got through. My dad still lives in the same house. They made it through. Yes, it was stressful. Yes, it was challenging, but they made it through. And you and I have lived through some of those trends, and we understand now what we're seeing as we see it. Which is why neither of us are overly concerned at this point. And I guess this is the message we want to bring to you today. It's a message of measure. Now, measure is the important word because it leads into what we're encouraging you all to do, and that is to start to look at what your cash flow is doing. Now, we tend to put our head in the sand because it's not comfortable, and the numbers rarely say what we want them to say. Can bring a lot of shame, can be embarrassing, can cause conflict in a relationship. Often what we want is not there, and so we tend not to look at it. Just pop our head in the sand, everything will be fine, we'll just work harder. Everything's going to be all right if I work harder. And nothing could be further from the truth. Just like when we spoke about in the boom times, more businesses go bust, more businesses do really well in the hard times if they are taking the measured approach. So if they start looking now at the opportunities available to them, if they start monitoring their cash flow, and look, there's 6 really important numbers that you should all be looking for, and they help to predict the trends in your business. You can be measured and nimble when you need to be. Nimble, I think, is going to be the big word this year instead of pivot. It just allows you to make some change or take a different direction or have choice in your business as the economy does shift. Now, there's no denying there's going to be some shifts. There'll be more interest rate rises. That means that our clients are more likely to think twice before they spend their money. And I think it's going to, I feel quite educated in saying and measured in saying it's going to peter out and not be quite as tough as those clickbait headlines are telling us right now, but only if you do the work that is required from today, starting today.
It's like storm season, which we're coming out of for much of Australia. The back end of summer, although there's still a few nasties floating around. I saw a cyclone developing up off Queensland there, Coxie. So hopefully you've got your storm plan in place. Got your torch and your radio.
My batteries.
Yep.
Up full of water.
And many people don't bother with that stuff. They go, oh, yeah, I should put a kit together. I should have the basics ready just in case. And what happens is we get complacent because a storm goes past and it's like, oh, that was a bit of a fizzer. And so the human mind is really great at normalizing things. And then when, you get a big flood event or a cyclone or something, lots of people get caught out because they weren't prepared. They didn't have the basics in place. And yes, this is a cheesy analogy. So I hope you're getting the lesson that having those basics in place doesn't take a lot of time or money, whether it's prepping your house for storm season or prepping your business for a financial or economic storm. Now, if it blows over and it's nothing, what's it matter that you've actually got the fundamentals in place and that you're measuring everything and looking at those 6 key numbers, like you're saying, Nic? But if it turns out to be a bad storm and you went, yeah, whatever, I don't need all that stuff, or I'm too busy to put it in place, that's when you get caught with your pants down and it turns to shit. And this is an explicit, so I'll use the S word. Drug references, swearing. What else can we stack into this episode, Coxie?
We do it mum jokes.
Mum jokes. Cash flow. That's a dirty word. That'll get us banned from social media for sure.
I think if there's one thing you take out of this today, it's starting to measure and monitor your numbers. I think it needs to be as simple as that. We are doing a webinar. We're going to teach you what you need to be taking closer eye on. We'll help you understand how to do that as well. We'll show you the tools that we use for our community so that you have the opportunity to do what is right for you and your business and start doing that now. And if I could encourage you, those of you who aren't ever going to show up to a webinar, that's okay. At least start to monitor your cash flow. We encourage all our members to do a cash flow forecast. We talk about it here on the podcast all of the time. And yes, it is boring. It's uncomfortable. Nobody likes it. Yet it gives you the opportunity to see the potholes before you fall into it. There is no use falling into a hole and thinking you can dig your way out, because often you can't. And yet, if you can see it coming, there's a few small tweaks that you can make that can potentially buffer over that pothole before you get there. Things like talking to your suppliers about payment terms, or your clients about shortening in some of those payment terms, or making a change to the kind of work you're doing in the next couple of weeks that brings in a quick cash flow so that you can buffer over that hole. Or, you know, we were talking yesterday, worst case scenario, when you can't pay any of your bills, including your staff. I've seen it happen time and time again. You can have conversations that prevent people from being really upset because they know what's coming. So you don't know any of that unless you've done some sort of cash flow forecast to understand what you might look like in the next month to 3 months. Even if you're only doing a month ahead, you're already 10 steps ahead of most other businesses that don't take a moment to check on where they're at.
Get the basics in place, gang. Check out the webinar if you're not in the Facebook group. I can't remember what it's called this week, but I think it's free business coaching for tradies or something. Check it out. We'll put all the links in the show notes to this episode, both on the website and in your podcast players, and on YouTube as well. We'll stick some links in there so you can go and grab some free info from us. There's no hard sell. It's just us sharing some info to try and help more tradies. And you know what? The more of you that we help through this stuff, you're actually part of the economy. So if your business does a little bit better and isn't as affected by the fear, because that's usually what drives a lot of this stuff, then collectively we do actually influence economic conditions. So it's the old thing about, think globally, act locally. I think it's, think nationally, act in your own business can have a difference. So go check all that stuff out. We'll put all the links in the show notes for you. And I'm going to go finish my coffee and brush up on my laughter game for our next episode, Coxie.
Yeah, I think you need to be doing, laughing yoga on a regular basis. Be a great way for you really to
I didn't join a laughter club.
That was almost good.
Thanks for listening.
Anyway.